Welcome to Zolder for the third round of the Blancpain Sprint Series. Very, very hot here yesterday. Glad to say it's about 15 degrees cooler, John Watson. Grey skies, but very good conditions to go out and qualify.
Well, what a contrast from the ambient of 37 Celsius about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, well, it's brightening up gradually, but there we see track temperature 17.7 Celsius, air temperature 15.5. There is a bit of thunder in the air. There was certainly a lot of thunder and lightning last night over Hasselt, where we were staying. Down at the Villeneuve chicane, this is the part of the racetrack probably infamous now because of the tragedy that occurred in 1982. It has been completely altered. We've now got a 3-corner chicane designed to slow the cars down from what was previously a really good corner, but safety concerns ultimately led to its change.
But overall, John, the shape of the circuit has changed very little over the years. You still feel as though it's an old school circuit. 15 corners around the 4.011 kilometre route, very much as it was when you raced.
Well, I came here in 1970. I mean, how long ago was that? And at that point, there were no chicanes at all. The circuit, because of the necessity to introduce more safety, to slow certain parts of the circuit down, we've got a chicane at the back of the pits, turns 5 and 6, and then of course further through the circuit up at 8, 9 and 10 at the Villeneuve chicane. So those are the two significant changes. There was a change much earlier in its career, which is the chicane just prior to the pit straight. Previously that was just a straight blast from turns 13 and 14 all the way down to turn 1.
But there are the pits, and they've changed precious little over the years. They've slightly extended down, and we have a nice tarmac paddock beyond. But drivers now starting to go through their thinking process ahead of going out. There's Robin Friets, who drove so well at Brands Hatch to take victory with Laurens Vanthoor. He's clearly going to be the first one into the number 1 Audi, and as you should be able to see, a whole new livery this weekend. And so there he has a quick chat with Laurens Vanthoor. What a pairing they are, John.
Yeah, I mean, this, one might say, arguably is the creme de la creme of Blancpain Sprint team drivers within the WRT Audi team. And Laurens Vanthoor did an unbelievable job in qualifying at Brands Hatch earlier in May. And everybody was left scratching their heads and saying, why or what does this guy do?
But there they are, sitting pretty at the top of the points table, 69 points. And don't forget, of course, they didn't get around to scoring any at all at the opening round in Nogaro. So really, really strong for Friets and Vanthoor. Ortelli and Richelme keeping that WRT Audi theme going in the second and third places. And then Norbert Siedler, 44 points for Ferrari. They could be a dark horse this weekend.
Yeah, and they've had a very good run here yesterday in the free practice session, albeit in these extreme heat, and I think many of the people that were running yesterday, in fact everybody running yesterday, would have been very careful in the way they opted to use the availability of tyres.
Yeah, most certainly, and they're talking about the cooler temperatures might play more into the hands of the teams with the turbocharged engines, that the Bentley and the Nissan. See the multi-cultural spread of this championship, looking from the top: New Zealand, Brazil, a couple of British drivers, of course Sean Walkinshaw, half Belgian, John.
Indeed he is,
so
very much so, his mother Martine, so he's Anglo-Belgian, and he is doing a good job for the team along with Craig Dolby, two young guys making their way forward, doing both the sprint and enduro events.
Now, if people are watching Blancpain qualifying for the Sprint Series for the first time, it's split into 3 sectors, and let me just explain how it works. The first one will be running from 9:15 to 9:30. It's a 15-minute session, obviously, and each team has to nominate a driver to go out in this session. We then have a 7-minute break, and at 9:37 we have another 15 minutes where the number 2 driver is sent out, and it's super quick fire. At that point we take the 10 best times across those 2 sessions, and those 10 cars will go out. We have the drivers nominated for session 3. We don't know which 10 cars will get into that. They will go out for a very quick fire, 10 minutes, and it really does come to a boil. You touched on it though. At Brands Hatch, we almost forget that Laurens Vanthoor dropped the car on the approach to Dingle Dell on the morning of the meeting there, got it back together as though nothing had happened, went out and slammed it onto pole position.
Absolutely.
Green flag, we can go and play if we wish.
Indeed. I mean these drivers are right on the edge of the performance of these GT3 cars, be it Audi, Ferrari, BMW. You see it all the way down the pitch, down to the far end of the pitch, the 2 Bentleys. Racing drivers, not just drivers driving around. They are absolutely as close as you can get to the limit.
Now, of course, yesterday we've got very few takers. Most of the cars are still up on their jacks, but it looks like the number 4 Audi, I think, is coming out. Is that the number 2? Just wait to see as it comes on round, but could have the track to itself. It is the number 2 Audi, so that will most likely be Enzo Ida on home ground. But all the rubber that was put down yesterday absolutely washed off the track, and it's Christopher Mies is going out.
The reason I was slightly hesitant, because I actually saw Enzo Ida walking the far end of the pit lane away from the Audi WRT garage en famille, looking very suntanned, being in the south of France. And it's Enzo Ida's picture, but it is Christopher Mies behind the wheel.
Yes, can't quite check the helmets through the window, but I checked on the pronunciation of his name yesterday with Lawrence Vantor. I said, is it Ide or Ede? He went, neither, it's Ida.
Ida.
So we'll go with Ida. From the mouth of a Belgian. So here's a chance for a first view of the track. And one thing a lot of people who haven't been to Zolder don't realise, there is quite a lot of camber change. Nice little rolling section of the circuit there. A chance to see cars going up and down. Of course, we had that at Brands Hatch, not at Nogaro, which couldn't be flatter if it tried.
I mean, there's a lot of parallels, I believe, between Brands Hatch and Zolder. They're both very similar in that they run through. Here you see this is the far side of the circuit, through the forest in effect. That is the outline of the racetrack, coming down now, hard braking. One of the areas where overtaking is possible, but of course very easily defended into turn 13. And it's 2.49 miles, 4.011 kilometres. It's a very busy lap, a lot of turns and a lot of braking. Brakes are an issue here in Zolder, so it's one of the things, aside from tyre management, I would say brake management is the second most important item.
So let's see. Of course, when they went out to play yesterday, it was hot, going hotter through the course of the afternoon, and really trying to get in the zone there.
Well, I think that's Maximilian. No, it's not an idea. I was going to say Maximilian Book, but it's not. It's an idea. So, driver just visualising the lap. So, just to both where the WRT Audis are, but also to track conditions and lap times. The lap we saw yesterday, quickest time was a 1:30.9 from the Norbert Siedler Ferrari. I expect that to be exceeded comfortably in this qualifying session.
Yeah, the Ferrari drivers have said, we've got a car just warming its way up as Christopher Mies flashes past and through the chicane, but Ferrari, the Rinaldi Racing crew were saying yesterday, we don't have a bad race car, we've got to get a good car for qualifying, and that's sort of with their pace yesterday. Let's see if they've got it right. They sort of think they've found a few tricks.
Well, let's hope they have, because nothing would be better for any GT Series than to have a Ferrari win. As we watch Christopher Mies thread his way through the Villeneuve chicane, and cautious not to take any advantage of the middle of that chicane. Track abuse will see a time deleted. So everybody fully aware coming here. So in these seasons in the past, and that part of the racetrack, if you're just a little bit too greedy, you will have that time deleted.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting as he comes down towards the end of the lap that only the 4 WRT Audis have gone out on the track. The other 14 cars are sitting still. Let's see what lap time can be achieved. 1:30.920 yesterday. Almost exactly. 1:30.957. Okay, there's the marker laid down by Christopher Mies.
Yeah, and that's his first flying lap.
Now let's take a look at the onboard. This is with Robin Friens. So this is your first chance, if you've just turned on this morning, to take a look at the rises and falls of the circuit here at Zolder. Going over the top, that's effectively going into the forest section, John.
Yes, and it's quite it doesn't look so much on the camera, but it's a much steeper rise and decline. Here we are through this Villeneuve chicane. This was the original corner. Turn 10 was the original corner, followed by 11. Another really good mid sort of speed but downforce related corner. Then the curve of 12 down into the heavy braking into turn 13. Again, as I say, easily defended, but one of the places that you can make a clean overtake. And then it's just flat out all the way up to the penultimate 2 corners, because it is a chicane. And also on the right hand side you'll see the blend lane. There it is for the pit lane, and drivers sometimes can get caught out by following another car that's going to come into the pits, and they're using the car ahead to make a judgment where they're going to brake, and they get then suddenly wrong footed. Okay, let's see if Robin Friens can go top. No, he can't. He's a quarter of a second down in second place there. 1:31.266. So 2 of the Audis, of the WRT Audis, 2 of their 4 have showed their times. Now this car, you may remember, was blue and black when we last saw it at Brands Hatch. Now it's gone back to a more, I would say, a kind of more familiar blend of red, white, black with a few yellow touches added in.
This is a special livery for this weekend. Competition was out there for people to design a car for Team WRT's home race, and that is the livery. Very patriotic it is as well, and certainly, John, from our point of view, helps us identify the number one.
Well, the yellow flashes on the rear quarter of the car do make it stand out, and that, of course, are the national colours of Belgium: red, yellow, and black. Christopher Mies did improve on that second flying lap by about 0.3 of a second, down to 1:30.598, which is about half a second quicker than we saw the best from the second free practice session on Friday afternoon.
Yes, you wonder how low they'll be able to go when we come to final qualifying. A huge rumble goes past our commentary position. That means it's one of the Bentleys. It's the 84, and that has Abril at the wheel. Vincent Abril driving that, and we have a new driver in the sister car, which has just gone across the line, 83. We have Tom Dillman brought in to replace, for this weekend at least, Olivier Lombard, and of course very, very handy single-seater driver, third in the Formula Renault 3.5 race at Monaco. Let's see what he can do.
Interestingly, he's been graded silver, which I'm surprised, because a driver with Tom Dillman's background and pedigree, personally I would have said he's better than silver, but that's the grade he's been given. Of course, if you're competing in the various categories within the Blancpain Championship, so some drivers are silver, sometimes some are gold, and even some are platinum. But for some reason, Tom Dillman in the Silver Cup, which is an event, there's two cars taking part in that Silver Cup, the other being the Fjordbach ISR Audi, the two Fjordbach brothers. So Tom Dillman is designated silver.
By the skin of his teeth, you must feel. Well, very, very close to the top of the timesheets at the moment. First chance to see the McLarens in blue. I'll come back to that in a second as Christopher Mies tries to do his bit, but it's Robin Freets on top, but by 0.016 of a second. For others, though, track space is what they're looking for, and the 84 Bentley with lights ablaze there. Vincent Abril flashing the blue McLaren to maybe get out of his way. It seems to be far enough clear. We're used to those being white, John. Turned up this weekend, they're a sort of mid-blue and black livery, and I've been told that's how they're going to stay all year. So let's get used to McLarens in black this time. Blue and black.
Down into turn one, Vincent Abril in the Bentley chasing the McLaren.
Well, it's super close. The top, it's the second there, one.
Yes.
51.58 down, I thought it was.
And this car on screen, 84 Bentley, has just gone up into third place. So we've got 7 minutes of the session remaining. We've only had 8 actual, what I would describe as operating times, running times. And of those 8, only, the top 5 would be competitive times. Everybody else is either on an out lap or on out, gone back in again. And now 6 3/4 minutes of the session to go. Up over the hill, down. Now, in the good old days, as an Audi has stopped down at the chicane. That's the number 2 car.
That's Christopher Mies, who's second fastest at the moment, 0.016 of a second now. What is the problem there? Waved yellow flags quite clearly. So at the moment, just while that's happened, that's second fastest. The number 1 Audi is fastest. The Bentley, the number 2 is going again. Thank goodness for that. At the chicane, it's not a place you want to park, but has that ruined the lap for the 83? I think it rather has.
It has, because Samkowski had done the fastest sector time of everybody, and of course he came at red flag. I wonder why.
Well, we've got it going again. You feel that's unless there's something we haven't seen. That situation is cleared.
Something we haven't been shown, that's for sure, because we saw Christopher Mies down at the Villeneuve chicane, and now we've got a red flag on the circuit, and we haven't been able to pick up any obvious reason why, other than whether it was considered or deemed in a dangerous position. But Mies got his car rolling again. So has the red flag been thrown?
Well, as you can see on
coincidentally,
the clock, there's Enzo Ide in the background. 6.5 minutes still remaining. So the Bentleys had been third and fourth. Niki Melnov just pushed them back to fourth and fifth. But that opening sequence there from Jules Simkowiak in the 83 Bentley, the fastest of all by about a third of a second. So that was a mighty lap, and he'll feel very, very thwarted indeed. The number 2 Audi is back in the pits. I haven't counted them all back in, but I have a feeling we could be going again really very quickly indeed, because I think that was the incident, the spun number 2, and he's got going. So yes, let's see.
Until we get clearer indication from race control, we're making that assumption.
So we have 9 teams, 9 cars who've put down a flying lap that counts, and unfortunately the other 9 cars have not achieved that task at all. 6.5 minutes will remain when we get going. But with Blancpain, it's very, very tight. There's only 7 minutes between this first section.
Well, it's going to be a minute and a half per lap. Now, if you leave the pit lane, you're not going to do a 1 minute 30 lap. So that's going to be down to 4.5 minutes. At best, probably more like just over 4 minutes, which in effect is 2 flying laps. And if you're really quick, you might sneak another one, the start of one before the flag comes out. But you're going to have to be on your toes when the track goes green, as it has now done. So track green again, and immediately, and that's the G2 Audi we're looking at as it comes out. Phoenix Racing.
That's... Yeah, well, there's Nicky Meyer-Mernhoff, who's third fastest of all at the moment. So out onto the track he goes.
I mean, that was the red flag was thrown.
Actually, that was Anders Fjordback. Just had to cut in. It was the other one. And now we see the one and only Nissan, a car that didn't go terribly well yesterday in second practice, but people are rather tipping this for a good result. Very strong showing at Brands Hatch. If it hadn't been for a broken splitter at the front, should have been higher in the main race.
And also a very good showing at Silverstone, the Enduro race just 2 weekends ago. The lead Nissan after 3 hours. So a car that is evolving, as are both Sean Walkinshaw and Craig Dolby in this package. Remember, the Nissan is one of those cars with a turbocharged engine, V6 in this case. Got a massive amount of torque, got a lot of straight line performance. It is a big, physically big car, not dissimilar to the Bentley Continentals GT3s that we are so familiar with. It used to be white with all the various other red, black identifications on it, but it is now, and in the duller light, it shows up more strongly.
It really does. In the full light, bright sunshine yesterday, and also at Brands Hatch, it did look as though they'd really done precious little and kept it white. But in fact, apart from the Bentleys now, we had a plethora of white cars. The McLarens have gone mid-blue, this has gone pale blue, so the colours have been changing through the years. But one thing that is developing, though, is the pace of that Nissan. But the clock is ticking down. Under 5 minutes remaining. Got to put in a representative time. Only 9 of the 18 cars have done a flying lap that counts so far.
Yes, and I mean, it's going to be 2 laps, and I would imagine what people are doing is because the track generates tire temperature very quickly, so being a little cautious as Sean Walkinshaw comes up into the chicane now, gets on it and starts the run. You can hear the V6 turbo engine spooling up. So it comes down across start-finish line. Clocks start now and down into turn 1.
As you said earlier, John, turn 1 is one of the few corners that's actually really been changed over the course of the years, and certainly safer than it used to be when there were more things on the outside to hit, and it was certainly a hairy, scary sort of corner.
Yes, I mean, every circuit these days has had to row back on obstacles that are close to the circuit into turn 4. Now up the hill, and another part of the racetrack where you can do a lot of good work in turn 4 to give you track position coming up into turn 5. Down the inside is the route you take. Of course, on a single flying lap, you're just maximising the racetrack to your advantage. Up the hill, drops down, and you're only out of turn 7 before you're basically back onto the brakes to get the car straightened up for turn 8, the right, 9. Don't take too much of the inside of the corner then. Turn 10. Then let the car run out to the curb. The curb on the outside can deflect the car if you catch it at a bad angle.
Well, still at the top of the timesheets is the number 1 Audi, 1 minute 30.582 by Robin Frieds. Just over 3 minutes remaining. This Nissan has set a flying lap and is 10th fastest at the moment, but that's not a representative one. Let's see what it can do as it comes through the final sequence of corners for the final time. Split's looking very good indeed, but fastest of all is that 84 Bentley. Before the stoppage, it was the 83 Bentley. That's only in the first sector, but now we have another pink sector time for sector 2, and that's Rob Bell in the McLaren. Seafried has gone 3rd fastest for the Ferrari. Well pointed out, John, and we're getting faster and faster. Where will Walkinshaw slot in?
Well, they're 12th because they had been 10th and they lost a couple of places in the last lap, so they've got one more flying lap, and they can begin a 3rd flying lap as they come across the start-finish line. So both lead Audis, number 1 and number 2, but it's 55. Suddenly the attempt to Rob Bell in the McLaren won 30.298, fastest overall sector 2. So Rob Bell, Kevin Estra, again, are really, really strong. We saw at Silverstone just how strong that partnership is.
Well, another person with a pink sector time is Vincent Abril in the 84 Bentley coming to the start-finish line. He was 9th. He goes top, 1 minute 29.966. He's taken another 1/3 of a second off the mark that Rob Bell had just set in the McLaren. So Vincent Abril, disappointed at Brands Hatch, didn't get to start after Maxi Buch had that big shunt out of Paddock Hill Bend. Here with a vengeance.
Yes, indeed. Now, I'm a little bit cynical and sceptical because I believe that what we are seeing right now are people using the very best of the tyres they have available, and Bentley may just have, in the case of the 84 car, slightly better tyres from Brands Hatch than some of the competitors, because they didn't get to use very many of those sets.
Well, let's see how the sister car is doing. The 83 Simkowiak is down in 9th place. Maybe, John, that's more representative. Now we're looking at Rob Bell. He set the fastest time. Last time round was immediately demoted to second. Now he's got another pink sector time. When he completes this lap, though, he's got to usurp 2 cars, because that McLaren, the 55, has dropped all the way, well, not that far, only down to 3rd place overall.
Looks at and runs right out to the edge of the curb. Doesn't the McLaren in the head-on shot look at a totally different car in this colour scheme than any other time we've seen it?
No, absolutely so. But is it a quick colour scheme? Let's find out. He's got the best middle sector. It moves him up 1 place to second, 1 minute 30.066. What's the reply going to be from Vincent Abril? No, it's a slower lap for the driver who's at the top of the time chart. So it's Abril, Bell and Seifried. They're the top 3 with 43 seconds remaining.
There is the car that was second, now third. Norbert Siedler in the Ferrari 333.
No, it's a slow first sector of the lap,
yes,
John. 3
yes.
seconds down. He's cruising back to the pits. Half a minute until the checkered flag comes out. It's Bentley from McLaren, from Ferrari, from Audi. Audi so strong, they went out, set the early distance. John, you're looking at something on the screen.
Well, he's got a screen which is actually a rearward-facing camera, so he's able to see. He can't see out of the mirrors because there's not really very much rearward visibility, even from the 2 windows, the door mirrors. So that's a rearward-facing camera. You can see as we go into now what is turn 13, turn 14 follows immediately after, and he's looking behind. So that's his way of knowing who is behind me.
You sure it wasn't on sat-nav settings earlier so you could learn the circuit? No,
that was my problem coming into the circuit this morning.
It is the hardest circuit in the world to find. You could drive past. So the checkered flag has waved. I think everyone is coming into the pits. Is anybody completing a flying lap? Anyone looking quick? Well, look, Caca Bueno in 9th has got 2 personal best sectors. Is he coming around to complete the lap on the track? Yes, we've certainly got a BMW coming out of the final chicane, and Norbert Siedler, you can see right on board with him into the pits. He's on the left of the pit wall, but on the right is the BMW, and he gains 3 positions up to 6th place there from Caca Bueno.
Well, after their success in Nagaro, the opening round, when they won the main race, of course that was with as we look at the Bentley coming in, just Maxime Martin, and that was it really illustrated, I think, to the BMW team. The car has got the potential and the pace to win a race. Nagaro, while it's a much flatter surface circuit than here we are in Zolder, but they're old school circuits in many respects. Certainly Zolder is a circuit that ought to play to the strengths of BMW. Certainly right now playing to the strengths of the Bentley. And Vincent Abril with a 1 minute 29.9, the only driver to break the 90-second barrier so far.
Yeah, well, he's cruising in, but I think a very good point you made there, John, about the tyres they managed to save by not getting to take part in the race at Brands Hatch. And I guess in turn that may have been another reason why Laurent Vantour was able to be so strong in qualifying at Brands Hatch, simply by stopping and not taking part in the race at Nagaro. So there we have Bentley top of the time charts there with Vincent Abril 1 minute 29.986, and Rob Bell got very close in the number 55 McLaren in 2nd place. Rinaldi Racing, they said their Ferrari be on form, and Norbert Siedler 3rd fastest. Attila Abreu 4th fastest for BMW. So yes, we've got a real mix, and then the Audi's down in 5th place ahead of the 2nd of the BMWs.
I don't think that's anything to be concerned about at this stage. I think by the time we get through to the final of the 3 qualifying segments, it would be a surprise to me not to see at least one of those Audi WRT Audis up on the front 2 rows of the grid, probably in pole position. It's a boring old thing to say, but the facts are that particularly the Laurens Vantour and Robin Freehan's car is massively quick, especially here, Belgian driver Laurens Vantour and Robin Freehan's.
Yeah, both of whom know the track very, very well. But interestingly, for all his success in everything he's touched, Laurens Vantour has not won a GT race here at Zolder. You do feel he's in with a very good chance. He's been on the podium before, but maybe getting the top step. But plenty of miles to go before we get there. Gap between fastest and slowest down to not a very good lap at all from Albert von Thurn and Taxis.
No.
There may well be a reason there. Maybe that interruption halfway through broke their chain of thought. But that's a car that's always gone well at Zolder.
Again, I mean, the Lamborghini has worked very well here in the past. Peter Cox Dutchman who lives literally across the border. Laurens van Thor is a resident of Zolder. He lives literally, as we keep repeating every time we come to Zolder, he overlooks the racetrack from his house. His personal bedroom is literally within, let's say, a good shout of the racetrack.
It's a very rare beast, isn't it? I think Rubens Barrichello, I think his grandparents' house overlooked Interlagos, but that very few others lived right on the track.
Yeah, that was when Interlagos wasn't actually part of the urban sprawl that it is now of São Paulo. So Maximilian Buch will be waiting to get into the car, take over, and Maximilian Buch had that unfortunate spin coming out of Paddock Bend, ran just a little bit wide, caught the curbing and put the car into generally a slow looping spin, but on the inside of the exit of Paddock Bend there is a substantial tyre bank and hit it heavily. He, being a small chap that he is, felt a bit like a pinball because literally his elbows and his knees, you can see the roll cage inside the car. Well, his right knee got hit severely against that roll cage, which is the driver protection against the driver's door. And believe me, it hurts, and it hurts for a long time.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of padding around your knee, do you? Might have some padding on the roll bar, but it's flesh and bone, but the bone just underneath.
There is padding there, but of course in the situation of an accident, your legs fly around, and the area where your leg might use that roll cage to support yourself isn't necessarily where your leg's going to hit the barrier, hit the roll bar inside the car.
Well, conditions, the sun is starting to work its way through the clouds. Looking down the pit lane, colours on the cars seem drivers out. We saw Vincent Abril climbing out of the car that was fastest, the 84 Bentley, and handing over to his teammate Maxi Buch, and likewise the other 17 cars are sorting out. So let's see, big car, big Bentley going through the chicane, well, through and slightly over. And John, looking at the way it tries to dig in there, and it does seem incredibly soft there, John. Is that something how you'd set up a car for Zolder? Because of course you do have to ride the chicanes here.
Well, I think every team looks at every circuit and they make a decision as to what they want. For example, going to the extremes. If you go to Silverstone, which was for the Enduro event 2 weekends ago, it's a downforce circuit, but this very high speed. So you need a car that is really going to be probably stiffer than you would want here in Zolder, where the corners are more middle speed. You want a little bit more compliance from the chassis. While the effect of the aerodynamics is still very considerable, it's different to that at, say, at Silverstone.
These very tight changeover times, precious little time for the driver who's climbed out, in this case Rob Bell from the 55 McLaren, to brief their colleagues. Of course, they both went out in the car yesterday, but Kevin Estre now strapped in that McLaren, and there's just under 1 minute to the start of the session, and the cars are still up on the jacks. Maybe we'll see this pattern. The cars that go out early in session 1 tend to go out early in session 2, so I guess the WRT Audis will be out very early on indeed, and this McLaren will be out maybe a lap or two later, John.
Yeah, but Kevin Estre, who I thought was outstanding, again referring back to Blancpain Enduro at Silverstone, he literally, as did Rob Bell, they drove the wheels off the car. And what is nice to see with the 650S McLaren, as opposed to its predecessor, the MP412C, which in its infancy was not as evolved as a race car as it was as a road car. And of course the road car is an entirely different animal to the race car. The road car runs a very sophisticated active suspension system which enables it to run around in an urban area with a normal kind of suspension setting. But when you go onto a high-speed road or circuit track day, then it adapts to those conditions. So it is the McLaren is a mechanically suspended car in its GT3 guise, as opposed to the road car version, which has got this active suspension, which is, as I say, extremely sophisticated, and I must say extremely comfortable as well.
Well, I thought it would be the Audis first onto the track. I thought it was going to be Team WRT, but it's the 74 Audi with the Fjordbach brothers taking to the circuit, and hoping, of course, that when he starts his first flying lap in this session, he doesn't have a host of cars coming out onto their warming up lap. But the track certainly to himself, and looking across from our commentary position, all the other cars I can see either still up on their jacks or just being put down onto terra firma. The Ferrari is also out. So we have two cars on the circuit, the 74 Audi and the 333 Ferrari. And now it's the big yellow Mercedes, and on board is none other than Bernd Schneider.
Well, Mr. Endurance Racing, and he's here doing a sprint event in Zolder, again just across the border from his native Germany. And Ben Schneider, wasn't he competing in the 9 hours?
The Zandvoort 12 hours.
12 hours.
3 hours on the Friday,
yes,
9 on the Saturday.
Yes,
and he starred in that. And the big SLS AMG Mercedes were the cars to have. They filled the top 4 places. But, Bernd is just really enjoying his racing at the moment.
The difference is Bernd Schneider is not what I would describe today as a professional race driver. He is racing in the same way he did when he was a professional race driver, but he hasn't got that pressure. He's doing it because he loves to do it. And I think that when you can race without the accepted pressure of being in a team that's expecting you to win all the time, as was the case in DTM when Ben Schneider was competing in that, he can just go out and do what he loves to do, and that is compete. And without that pressure, actually, quite often, your performances are more appropriate.
Well, just looking, John, as the Fjordback Audi goes onto its first flying lap, made a mistake at the first corner and the ramifications carried on to turn 2 there, understeering like absolute mad, the 74 Audi.
That's more about getting your tyre temperatures up to operating temperature. So the track temperature we saw only 17, just under 18 Celsius. So that's cool by the standards, certainly, of what was the case on Friday afternoon. One flying lap around here should be able to bring those tyres up to operating temperature, but depends how you took your out lap.
And now, as you saw, going past Bernd Schneider, he had there is traffic for him to pass. About 6 or 7 cars came out while Fjordback was on his formation lap, if you will, and he's coming across several of them here on his flying lap in the 74 Audi, one of 2 from the ISR stable. And joining him out on the circuit in the other ISR car will be Marco Bononomi. But we have obviously 2 purple sectors for that 74 Audi in this session. Of course, the slate is scrubbed clean in between. But as we say that already, Bononomi, the sister car, has gone fastest in Sector 1. And Thomas Fjordback, yes, he has the purple type for now in Sector 2.
Yes, I mean, the lap has been a little bit untidy, particularly coming out of that very tight right-hander turn 13, ran the car over the curb on the outside. Goes quickest on a 132.687.
Yeah, but we know full well we had under 1 minute 30 in the first sector. Now,
busy wheel of the Ferrari down into the Villeneuve chicane, and Norbert Siedler working very hard indeed behind that wheel. Don't like to see a driver working the wheel as aggressively as that. Now, if you're on the limit of the amount of grip coming through the tyres is such, then maybe that's the fine balance between keeping the car in control and it being slow.
Well, that onboard footage from Norbert Siedler's Rinaldi Ferrari shows just how narrow the circuit is, and now Norbert coming round towards the tail end of the lap, and it seems to open out a little bit there. The pit buildings to the right. Target time 1 minute 30.9. 1 minute 29.393. No wonder he was working so hard. That was a mighty lap from Norbert Siedler there.
All that work on the wheel clearly was to good effect, because he's gone 0.6 of a second quicker than the best we saw, which was from the Bentley at the end of the qualifying session 1. Now, there's a reason for that. It might be the driver is a genius. It might be that the car has found a lot of time. But I think it's simpler than that. I think that's just a fresh or a new set of tyres that is on the Ferrari. You don't just find 1.6 seconds ahead of Marco Bononomi in the Audi, second place. You don't find a second and a half just like that at this end of the timescale.
Marco Seefried watching on from the Rinaldi Racing Garage in this wonderful bright green livery, and no doubt he knows what the state of the tyres are on the car, but also he would have seen just how hard Norbert Siedler was having to work to set that time. Very quick time coming up, but into the pits.
Yeah, Craig Dolby did a fastest first sector, sort of about a second down in the second sector, opted to come into the pits. 9 minutes 45 seconds remaining, so Craig Dolby in behind the wheel of the Nissan, so that's MRS GT Racing's car.
Marco Bononomi coming up to complete another lap. He's dropped down to 4th in the timesheets, moves up to 3rd, but the driver in 2nd, we haven't talked too much about him. Bernd Schneider also up beneath 1 minute 30, 1 minute 29.912 for the big yellow Mercedes, and there it is. But in the background of our shot, who's coming down on the charge? One of the Audis, it's the number 3 Audi, and on board that at the moment is Stefan Richelme.
Yep.
Can Bernd Schneider improve, though? He looks like he's backing off. He's come right off. He's done that lap, got beneath 1 minute 30, job done.
Well, he will make his way back to the pits. But it is right now Laurent Van Voor, actually, who is the man on the attack. Here he is, coming into these final 2 corners, a little bit loose under braking into the first turn left, but fastest first sector, fastest second sector. Laurens van Thor is going to go fastest overall, and he comes across the line 1:29.083, 3/10 of a second quicker than the Ferrari.
Looks easy when you're that good, doesn't it? But again, we saw still. Oh, someone's had a very big off-track moment at the.
No, he's coming out of the pits.
Coming out of the pits. I thought they just got in too wide. But yes, you have to check the timing screen. But that was the Fjordback car coming out, having made a very quick visit to the pits.
Interestingly, Laurens van Thor's times fastest overall first, second sector, but not in the third sector. I did pick up that when he turned into the final chicane, it looked like a little bit of a flinch on the Audi. So Laurens van Thor still was sufficiently quick in the first 2 sectors to be able to secure overall provisional quickest time.
Sergio Jimenez riding on board the number 0 BMW, 7th fastest at the moment, moves up 3 places to 4th place, but north of 1:30, 1:30.010. And the optimum lap, the clouds are getting a bit thicker again, is fastest we've seen. Oh, bonnet up on the Nissan. That is not good indeed. What do you reckon they're doing there, John?
Well, I don't know whether they're making a suspension change or not. They were working around the front struts of the car. So, or maybe something else, because I'm not sure. Just hard to tell looking at that shot if there's anything to do with the brake servo on the car, whether that was an issue. Anyway,
well, we know the car was quick because we saw that purple sector
absolutely
time.
But we just need to get a little refreshment here from the Nissan team to give us an idea as to why the lap that Craig Dolby was on, which looked to be a potentially very good, certainly a top 10 lap, resulted in the car going back into the pits.
So Peter Cox on board this weekend, very close. Oh, what was that flapping away? That was a
bit of bodywork off the
chicane is difficult to get through, but contact there. Now back with car 0. We've got that up in 4th place, Sergio Jimenez. He luckily doesn't have a Lamborghini in this way, but Peter Cox must be feeling he's not been made very welcome on his return to the series. But you start to run out of options of where you can go.
Yeah, I mean, and also if you're on a flying lap and you come across traffic in that particularly tight part of the racetrack, you are going to try and push your way through, and the contact did see a bit of carbon fibre, whether it was from the Lamborghini or from the BMW, tumble down the circuit as Sergio Jimenez comes across the line. And, well, in fact, he's in 5th place now. McKelney has gone up to 4th in the Audi. Bernd Schneider is still in 3rd place, and it's Van Thor and Norbert Siedler in the Ferrari. Well, provisionally 1st and 2nd quickest.
Great we've moved over to the 83 Bentley, because new to the series, he only drove the car early this year in the wet at Paul Ricard, is Tom Dillman. Purple first sector, and thumbs up from John there, driving it with great aplomb. Oh, the TV directors will love that shot.
Yeah, but he aggressive, and he got oversteer mid-corner, and he still drove through it, and he had to run a little bit wide on the exit of turn 11. That'll take a 1/10 of a second here or there. In fact,
it's cost him already. His best second sector time is he lost about 0.4 of a second. We'll still see how far it can move him up the charts. He could get up to 1:30. I think he'll be just above that at the end of this lap. What a great opening sector, but he's learning as he goes. He drove, as I said, in the wet, a little bit of track time yesterday, and now
and he's a silver driver. Goes across the line. Tom Dillman
goes up a couple of places.
7th place, yes.
So there's definitely more speed in that car. That middle sector was not good at all. And the final sector, as you saw, that move. Yeah. Well, he meant to look back at that and go, I see exactly what I did wrong.
But just watch the body language of the Bentley. You've got a hot rod single-seater driver, and we're getting more of these drivers who are coming into GT racing, coming into the Blancpain race family. And you could just see how Dillman was really working the car. Maximilian Buch in the sister car, currently in 3rd place. Just checking the timing. The language from the car is less aggressive. Dillman is wringing the neck of the 83 car, whereas Maximilian Buch, and not even running out to the exit of turn 3.
No, he's pouring a very smooth flow of liquid out of that jug. Car 84 with Maxi Buch, 3rd fastest. He's just improved on his first sector, 0.057 of a second. Will that be enough to move him down? He's got to find a 1/3 of a second to depose Norbert Siedler from 2nd on the charts. But don't forget, John, we've just over 4 minutes remaining. It's about being in one of the cars that's produced the 10 fastest times to go into Q3, and that's really in the minds of most of them. Now the question is, what will we get from Craig Dolby? He's had that time in the pits, he's gone back out in the Nissan, but has yet to put a flying lap on the board.
So the Bentley is into the pits. Maximilian Buch, 3rd quickest, 29.6. Frank Stippler in the Nardi number 4, he's up into 5th place, deposing Bert Schneider, Jimenez, and so the one, Peter Cox, 10th. So he's just leapt up, and having seen that contact at this part of the circuit, 2 laps ago, has managed to get a lap sufficiently good, just fractionally a second slower than Laurent Van Thor, still remaining quickest.
And he's just a margin down. I said it's the top 10 that counts. Kevin Estre is in 9th, but watching him now, he's just put a green first sector, followed by a green second sector. So I think we'll get him going up right into the mix, and that car gets better and better with every meeting it puts under its belt. New, as you said, John, at the start of this year, looking so balanced. And in fact, the difference in drama between that head-on shot and what we saw not so long ago with Tom Dillman. Yes, a little clout of the chicane, that's perfectly permissible, but the car was travelling in the right direction, not abusing its tyres. So 9th at the moment for Kevin Estre. How many places will he gain? 3rd, 4th? 3rd place he gets.
Yep, and he'll be happy, I think, with that lap time. It's still 0.4 of a second away from the time of the fastest Audi, Laurent Van Thor, but really within grabbing distance of the second quickest time, the Ferrari. It's only 1.146 of a second.
Really just looking to see who's going to fall out of the top 10 and who's going to go in. And at the moment, Tom Dillman's in the pits, being flagged out. There's only 2.5 minutes remaining. He's got to get out to get a flying lap because he's outside the top 10 overall. Craig Dolby also not in the top 10 in the Nissan.
What's this, Kevin Estre? What are you doing?
Well, he's got the 3rd fastest time at the moment, but he certainly won't be going 2nd or 1st with that sort of moment.
No, that was whether there was a brake issue there, or whether that was just looking down on the cockpit making an adjustment moment, but it illustrates just how easy it is if you make a small error under braking up into turn 5, 6 and 7, how easy it can all go wrong. There is Peter Cox, currently now in 11th. He's been disposed by Ajmer in the Mercedes.
Yeah, so Cox is the driver just outside the top 10, and Craig Dolby is running out of track space in which to make this move. The clock's ticking down, 1 3/4 minutes remaining. 84, Bentley into the pits. That's fine. It's sitting in, was 4th place, just down to 5th, as Valdeño Brito has got the 77 BMW up into 4th place.
Well, unfortunately for Craig Dolby, he's got Peter Cox ahead of him. Cox has got himself into a position where he needs now to do a lap, and there's a car further down the road. So Cox is looking for track position, which is impacting on the time that Craig Dolby is able to do. And there will be time clearly for one more flying lap for both these cars. But certainly in the case of the Nissan, it doesn't need to have Peter Cox directly ahead, close enough to interfere or come into effect on his lap time.
Yeah, as it's his out lap, he should back off and make the space now. He should be into what is his final lap. But Marco Asmo's just moved up into 8th place, so the scenario is changing. Sergio Jimenez in the 0 BMW is the driver on the edge at the moment. Also on the edge quite clearly is Craig Dolby, but does he have enough track space ahead of him? We'll find out. Well,
at the pace that Peter Cox is going, the gap isn't extending. Likewise, Craig Dolby's not making any significant inroads. We'll see when we come up to this chicane, because there is the Audi ahead of the Lamborghini. In fact, they're all too close together now to enable any one of these two cars, the Lamborghini or the Nissan, to have an effectively clear run and hopefully get a time that will get one or both into the final qualifying segment, which is only the top 10 cars are able to run. And that's when we would expect to see even quicker times coming from the pole sitter than we've currently provisionally got.
Well, the checkered flag is out in about 5 seconds, and these drivers, they will come to that checkered flag. This will be the end of their final lap, and a big swerve there from the Tom Dillman. He needs to get a move on, and he is. He's set a purple first sector time, but luckily for him, there's nobody running immediately ahead of him. So down in 14th place overall. Can he gain it? But don't forget, John, he got it wrong at the end of the second sector. It affected his second sector time and his third sector time.
He got a big oversteer moment in the middle of the corner. This time much cleaner, good exit. And I suspect it's going to go not, but it's gone green. So he is en route right now from 14th on a 1:30.2. So I would expect to see the Bentley comfortably into the middle 1 minute 29s, which would certainly, if everything goes to this final sector, see him get into the top 10 knockouts of qualifying.
Well, we know for sure, John, that Craig Dolby has missed out. The Nissan down in 11th place, just a fraction down on Bert Schneider's Mercedes, and that will probably become 12th. Because yes, indeed, we have the change. Dillman moves up to third and pushes everybody back. So great debut here so far from Tom Dillman. The contrast between his flying lap there and the one before, quite remarkable. He looked, he listened and he learned.
Yeah, he listened and learned, but I think he also has benefited his public. I mean, again, we keep referring back to the gains that are made by holding back as much of your best, not your new tyres, the best of your rest tyres, so that when you need the tyre, which is ultimately this session and final session.
A little note there, looking at 77 on the screen, just come across the line in 15th place, but Valdania Brito presumably exceeded track limit.
Because that drops him all the way down into 15th place. So obviously somewhere around the racetrack.
Turn 9, so the exit of the chicane.
Yes, and again, it's more to do with probably cutting the exit of the corner.
So all happy in Ferrari land because they were second fastest. So looking good. They've got to where they need to go. On top of the car, waiting for this final top 10 shootout. Super quick fire. We only have 10 minutes rather than 15, in which the top 10 drivers will go out and go for pole position. So top at the moment is the number 1 Audi. We thought it'd be quick, and certainly it's proved to be. 1 minute 29.086 seconds, but Ferrari right in the mix, a third of a second down, with Tom Dillman, astonishingly good run there right at the end to put the 83 Bentley up into third place. We expected great form from the McLaren, and fourth fastest, and Dillman has been given the honour, quite an honour indeed, on his debut here to do the shootout, nominated as the driver for session 3.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good judgment on the part of the HTP Bentley team. Tom Dillman, as we know, a young single-seater star coming into Blancpain and imposing his basic pace at an earliest opportunity.
So 1.5 seconds between provisional pole position, which of course is now scrubbed, and the 74 Audi, the 2 ISR Audis down at the bottom of the timesheets there. But the clock stops for no one, and for the 10 fastest combinations, we have one more qualifying session to go. The shootout for pole position, the top 10 will go out to play, and the number 1 Audi at the front of your screens there in its new, especially for racing at home in Belgium, livery, is the car that tops the timesheets. 1 minute 29.086 seconds. And in fact, the best optimal lap of all was 1 minute 28.762. That's if you put the drivers at best times across 3 sectors. They had the best times in one of those sectors, and it shows the others have speed elsewhere around the track.
Well, I would not be surprised, that optimum time, based on what we've seen in qualifying 2, to see one or more of the top cars on the front row of the grid into a 1 minute 28, because ultimately that's what it's all about, this last 10 minutes, about the out and out pace, and you'll use your best rubber, you'll use your quickest driver, and those combinations normally lead to improvements in times.
One thing that would be really good to see is a run around the lap. If people are coming in, see the flow of the circuit here at Zolder, and here we are on board the Ferrari, going super strongly this weekend, and Norbert Siedler is your guide through turn 1.
He does a lot of work in the steering wheel. He's feeling for the front of the car. He comes to all that little minute little adjustments on the steering wheel, just feeling for the front end grip to make sure I've got it before he is able to commit, get the throttle open. I actually was maybe criticising over usage of the steering wheel. I don't like to see that sort of seesawing on the wheel of a race car. Normally it indicates the balance of the car isn't where you want it to be. As it turned out, this particular lap would put him into third or second quickest. Hard on the brakes into turn 5. Need to be clean through here. Those curves are aggressive. You hit them hard, you will certainly get airborne, and you may do damage to your car. Then down through the compression, then hard on the brakes, down the gears, then you turn right, then just swing it back to the left. And here on the 9, watch the curb on the outside. That can set the car off, and then you're into turn 11, and then the flat out curve of 12, down the hill, hard on the brakes, down 3 gears, and here's all the gearbox and the brakes together, sort of almost chattering as they just get down to speed to make the entry into turn 13.
But as you said earlier, John, this used to be just a straight line past the pits, but of course the final chicane has been inserted to lower the speeds on that charge down to turn 1. And if all's well, you haven't clouted the curbs too hard up to the end of the lap, and certainly the bright green Ferrari is looking very strong this weekend. But of course, speed in qualifying and speed in the race could be 2 very different creatures.
Very much the case. So There's the BMW that had its time deleted.
And as a consequence, being pushed back into the garage, not getting to play in the third qualifying sector. In fact, neither of its times were good enough to put it there. So the Hero car and Sergio Jimenez will be out to drive that in this final session. You can hear people working away down in the pits, waiting to see what tires will go on. Sempre Senna, of course, a message carried around the world, but most notably by this team.
Yeah, it's interesting that the acknowledgement of the great Brazilian world champion is carried forward here in Blancpain in Zolder. I don't think this is a Senna. I don't think he ever raced on the.
Well, he would have done, but not in Formula One, by and large. Let's have a quick think. Obviously, he raced here in European Formula 4 2000. Yes, he probably did race here in Formula 1.
I'm just thinking, it was the last Grand Prix here was. When was the last Grand Prix at Zolder? We had a Grand Prix in Spa.
I think his first 2 years he raced here.
I mean, imagine driving a turbocharged Grand Prix car around this racetrack. Pretty much in the guise it is. They didn't have the Villeneuve chicane. It took a year or so after the tragic accident of Gilles Villeneuve to have that chicane introduced. And there is much. I think that's a colour. Ron Dennis, take note. Your car looks great in that metallic aquamarine blue.
You know, yesterday when it was bright, it didn't look so good, but in fact today, it looks a lot better on the track. Well, not always on the track, because clearly a little bit of corner cutting, but this is something that happens. The nature of Zolder attracts it.
Whether that was a brake problem, whether that was just a drop-off from Kevin Estra, but what he did actually was the right thing. He realised he was going too quick to make the entry into the corner. So instead of going over the curb, he went behind the curb, which is not as aggressive. And consequently, any potential for damage to the car by going over the highest part of the curb, trying to recover, was avoided.
Yeah, using his head there. I thought an interesting touch there with these gull-wing doors. He had a little ribbon handle to pull it down to close it, because the doors are so far away when they're open to let drivers in and out.
These are not quite gull-wing, but so that they
front hinge, sort of diagonal front.
Yeah.
Green flag.
Dihedral.
Oh, it's quite early on a Saturday for that shot.
But it means you've got to stretch out, or stretch out to stretch up. And when you're attached by your six-point seatbelt, you've got little movement, so you need the strap to get hold of the door to be able to close it.
Right, the red rear wing helps us to identify it's the number 3 Audi. Gradually those cars are becoming differentiated. So that's being driven out by Christopher Mies, who went very well in qualifying Sector 1. Sorry, Christopher Mies is in the car above. I'm looking down. Third, it's the 3 car, Stefan Richelme, up, thrown by having 0 at the top of the timesheet. So I counted 3 down, 1, 2, 3. So Stefan Richelme, strong form down with Stefan Ortelli at Nogaro, not so good at Brands Hatch.
Anyway, so all the outlap, is this going to be the fresh set of tyres for the young Monegasque driver, or will he get that after he's done an outlap just again to go through the whole process in the space of 5 minutes? The circuit does change. Yeah. It'll be different. The feeling the driver gets will be different to what he experienced some moments ago.
Kevin Estra there on your shot, also putting heat into his tyres, and rather sensibly he was closer to the Audi, and he's just dropped back to give himself a little bit more pace and space in which to play. And certainly of those two, you have to favour the 55 McLaren, not just because it has a new livery, but certainly as we saw in that session, both Rob Bell and then latterly Kevin Estra really making it start to sing.
Well, the McLaren is beginning to look like the race car that its potential always indicated it would be. And with this in its current guise, the 650S, with the alterations to the basic car specification, that then is a further altered to allow it to compete in GT3. The homologation of the car is more favourable to it in its racing context, which it wasn't necessarily when it was introduced in MP412C guise. It sort of was short in certain areas, and of course as it's homologated, then you are unable to really make any adjustments.
I have to presume most of these people are on brand new sets of rubber, thus all the winding up to get the heat into them. And here goes Kevin Estra to start his flying lap already. Stefan Richelme has started his, and the gap between them has really opened up. So a clear track on which to play, unless someone has just come out of the pits ahead of him, but using just the right amount of turn of the curbs there at turn 1. A little twitch into turn 2 there from Kevin Estre, but right out to the margins again through turn 3. How good do you think that McLaren's looking right now,
It's good. I mean, you've got to turn 2, the exit of 2 blends into the apex of 3. You want to make that sort of one sort of sinuous curve. And out of turn 4, unsurprisingly, 28.696, fastest overall of anybody at this very early stage. We've got just under 7 minutes remaining. Kicks up the dust on the exit of 6, over the hill, down the drop, and then onto the brakes. It's more important to be clean and efficient through here than, again, a little oversteer in the middle. But that's Kevin Estre's driving style. He is quite aggressive on the wheel. He throws the car around. You can really do that if you've got the confidence the car is going to be with you. And certainly you can see that he is capable and believes in the car to do what he's just done.
I think that really is the crux, John, the sheer confidence he has. We saw it at Brands Hatch when he overtook places other people weren't really trying, down the inside into Graham Hill Bend. The way he's happy to clump the curb on the way into the corner, almost pitch the car in, but or over.
Oh no, that is aggression. All the good work that he's done on the first and second sectors, he's lost now as a consequence. Rakelny's gone quickest. Kevin Estre has now gone subsequently, well, it doesn't really matter. He's quickest, 29.6, but it would have been better than that. It would have been a low 29, and it may be kissing the 28s.
Well, the closest to 28s was Laurent Vantoy in qualifying session 2. He's out on a track at the moment in that new livery, number 1, and let's see, will he be the first driver into the 1 minute 28s? So at the moment we only have 2 flying laps on the board, but that middle sector time is a purple one for Laurent Vantoy coming down towards the end of the lap. 1 minute 29.086 in his first qualifying run in qualifying session number 2. This is qualifying session number 3. Frank Stippler just goes top, 1 minute 29.486. And Laurent Vantoy, 1 minute 29.020. He tops the time charts.
And this is the Ferrari coming out of the final chicane. So 333, Seidler behind the wheel looking to see it's quickest, 28.9. This car's pace isn't. We saw great speed from it on Friday afternoon, and it's consolidated by being provisionally quickest. Maximilian Buch didn't let him hold that position for very long.
5 seconds, I reckon, was all he was allowed to keep it. Then the rumble of the 84 Bentley, and it's not just rumble, it's speed as well. So Maxi Buch, he's really on top of the car. And as you said, it looks so well balanced when this young German is at the wheel. He pours it through the corners, and it's a big car. He's a small fellow, sits very low. So it's quite an alien driving environment until you get used to it.
Oh, Maxi Buch flirts with the gravel on the outside of turn 5, and it will have kicked a lot of gravel onto the exit of the corner as a consequence. So he needs to be careful. That left rear will be still suffering from having been off track, but now up over the hill as we go back on board with the Audi Laurent Vantoy, fastest in sector 2 overall, the third currently 29.020, just 0.2 of a second away from the coveted pole position here for this afternoon's qualifying race.
Well, I'm sure he'll get into the 1 minute 28s on this run. Fairly good in the first sector, very good in the second sector. 1 minute 28.716, not the best time in the third sector. It's interesting how they split their times around the circuit. The best time in the first sector was a quarter of a second quicker than Laurent Vantoy managed on that lap, but the way that number 1 Audi can knit the middle section is phenomenal. Is there an improvement from Seidler? No, stays in third position. It's Vantoy from Maxi Buch, it's Audi from Bentley, then that green Ferrari 333, third fastest.
So the Ferrari is coming in, it's going on a slow lap. So we've got currently Laurent Vantoy and Maximilian Buch on the provisional front row. This car, the Ferrari, third quickest, and then Stefan Rakelny, number 3 Audi, sharing with Stefan Ortelli in current 4th place.
Yeah, so cruising in, looking for movers on the charts, and the McLaren, how's that faring? Down in 5th place at the moment, 1 minute 29.253.
Doesn't. Car currently on the provisional front row of the grid. Tom Dillman behind the wheel of 83. Kevin Estre knows that proximity to a car ahead of you is going to have an interference with your lap time.
Well, even if he's just finding it very entertaining, but again, the difference between Tom Dillman's first flying lap and his second in the second qualifying sector, he really calmed it down, and again, he's really driving very nicely there through the chicane. In fact, the Bentleys tend to stay off the curbs much more than the McLaren does.
Yeah, but I think that's more a function of the particular drivers. Some drivers like to attack and be aggressive. We saw Dillman drive in aggressive fashion in Q1, coming through here, turn 11 in particular, the car looking very much better, and Tom Dillman realising there's nothing to be gained by running aggressively off the track on the outside of turn 11.
We should have 10 cars in this session. Only 9 have gone out because Marco Asma hasn't brought the 71 Mercedes out. He's probably very happy to be 10th and is just going to save his rubber for the race. Now is Tom Dillman improving on this lap? Yes, he is. He's got a green first sector and a green second sector with 1 3/4 minutes remaining. Dillman is down in 8th place at the moment. Needs to get into the 1 minute 29s to improve. Can he manage that? Yes, he can. 1 minute 29.423. Just nips ahead of Sergio Jimenez. So up to 7th place for the 83 Bentley.
So the car that we want to keep a little eye on, Cabanestro, was behind this particular car. You can see how much he's dropped back. In fact, Cabanestro has come into the pits. So he's decided that that's the best I can do. I've got a 129.2, third row of the grid in 5th place, and going to be presently alongside Frank Stippler in the number 4 Audi. But we've still got a minute to go and there will be cars on track. We've only got 2 cars currently that have come in from their runs.
Well, here's one about to complete a lap, down in 8th place at the moment. Sergio Jimenez, can he improve into the final sequence of corners around this lap? He's on a 1 minute 29.4, just been usurped by the 83 Bentley, coming down the pit straight for what will be the end of his final flying lap. And he moves up a position. He pushes Dillman back down to 8th, vaults up to 7th place and ends up just short of Frank Stippler's number 4 Audi.
Just coming out of turn 1. Running out to the outside of the exit of the corner, then watch to try and make 2 and the blend into 3, and that's about as nice as it can get. Then the short run down on the brakes. Robin Freans standing in the WRT Audi pit, looking very happy indeed with the work done by his teammate. I mean, what's it like being a teammate to Lawrence Van Thor? Whatever you give him, the guy just drives the wheels off him.
He does, and he's sitting there a 1/4 of a second faster than anybody else, and then very close to second place, Maxi Buch and Norbert Siedler in the Bentley and the Ferrari. But a little wry smile and a thumbs up from Robin Frintz there. That'll be another pole position. Thank you very much. And out to Parc Fermé to greet Lawrence Van Toort. Very strong job there. So it's good to see the spirit between the drivers. Norbert Siedler just coming back and giving him a shake of the hand, but quiet satisfaction, I think, in the team WRT camp. Their home race, obviously pole positioned, very important for sort of patriotic reasons, but also just the rise and rise of this duo. Really,
yeah, I mean,
a great pair.
It's a very good pairing, and again, Lawrence Van Thor, who came into GT racing basically 4 years ago, like so many young guys, their career stalls out at a certain level within the single-seater, have a sort of direction, and WRT, as it happens, as one of the many teams involved in the Blancpain series of events, are looking to pick up these up-and-coming young talents and filter them into this series and educate them in their skills and arts of being a GT driver.
Well, we've still got Marcus Winkelhock out on the track playing, John. It seems everyone else has parked up, but he just got onto that lap before the checkered flag came out. He's down in 9th. Will he improve? Yes, up to 6th place. So Marcus had the track to himself there. So they played their cards very close to their chest, and it really worked for them. And 1 minute 29.257. Had he gained another 5/1000ths of a second, he'd have pushed the McLaren back a position. So just slotting in behind Cabanestro. Yeah, but onto row 3.
They'll be on row 3 alongside Cabanestro, as we see the sinuous way of getting in and out of a GT car. So these are both teammates, friends, and they were competitors. Well, in their childhood, they raced karts. So they've known each other for a very long time, gone in slightly different directions. Stefan Ortelli, teammate, of course, to congratulate Lawrence Van Thor, with Raquelny down in 4th place. That's Ortelli's teammate. So one might say almost perfunctory job done by the number 1 WRT Audi of Lawrence Van Thor and Robin Freans.
So we now know pole position to the number 1 Audi, 1 minute 28.716. The important thing isn't the lap time, it's the fact it's a 1/4 of a second ahead of the best of the rest. And Maxi Buch delivering 2nd place for the 84 Bentley, and Norbert Siedler doing a very strong job to be really close in there in the 333 Ferrari. 2nd of the WRT cars, number 3 starting down in 4th place. Then the McLaren with Cabanestro providing plenty of fireworks to be fifth fastest. Very close indeed, with Markus Winkelhock in the Phoenix Audi right at the end, closing in there. And Frank Stippler and James Nash seventh fastest in the number 4 Audi. BMW's best place down in 8th place there for Sergio Jimenez, just ahead of Tom Dillman, who was so spectacular in the number 83 Bentley to qualify in 9th position. 7/10 down on pole position, John.
I mean, it's what, 3/4 of a second, even just under that. So a good effort by everybody. Just indicates the competitiveness of the entire top 10 field.
So conditions were very, very hot and eventually enormously wet last night with a huge electrical thunderstorm. Completely different circuit today, John, and the drivers have to sort of learn it all over again. There's no practice this morning. It's find the track as you do on qualifying morning and have to go straight out there. So quite a lot of readjustment for some of them.
Yeah, for many of the drivers, it'll be almost like coming to a brand new circuit. Conditions yesterday were extreme. The heat was very, very high indeed. That would have a bearing on the actual circuit itself, the high circuit temperature, high ambient temperature, then tyres, brakes, everything becoming the victim of those extreme temperatures. This morning, much, much cooler. Different racetrack. It's just a personality change, all due to temperature.
And it's no surprise that even after this session, Stefan Richelmy and fellow Monegasque Stefan Ortelli still have plenty to talk about. Drivers with a huge amount of experience, but the track conditions change, the weather conditions. Always in racing driving world, there is something to discuss.
Yes, there'll be little details. It'll be maybe there's a fraction too much initial understeer. We need to dial that out. But do you want to do that because the qualifying race this afternoon? Ambient might be a lot higher and we might be nearer to where we were Friday afternoon.
But gauging these situations is the job of the very best drivers, and Laurens Vanthoor, there's a bit of a clump on the first corner. This is his pole lap, riding on board with him through turn 1, turn 2. You're very keen that turn 2 and turn 3 run together as one, and look at the balance of the car, Vanthoor, the master.
It's not difficult to do this, but it's important to make sure that the exit of turn 3, there's as much speed on the exit, and that really is determined by your exit at turn 2. Then the run up behind the pitch, that's the pitch just to the right of picture, then very hard on the brakes down into turn 5, 6, the curb in the middle there, and 6 is an aggressive curb. You want to stay off that. The rise up the top, then down into the compression of turn 7, straighten the car up hard on the brakes, and you're almost still on the brakes when you're making your turn. Now, I have to say, Laurens Vanthoor took a lot of the inside of turn 8, and he got away with it. Nothing has indicated that he maybe gained an advantage, but certainly he had little margin left. Otherwise, that could have been a time that was deleted.
Well, it's the mark of a driver on top of the situation, coming down towards the end of the lap. It's the first sort of flat section of the circuit for a while. You've had all the gradient from turn 6 onward. Now down to that final entry to the last chicane, using the curbs quite judiciously there, but getting the car back onto terra firma and accelerating across into the 1 minute 28, and that's what you needed to do. Pole position for the race, and here we have. Look, blue sky. We had that yesterday, and the temperature was 20 degrees higher than today. But Zolder looking in good form this morning, and hugely exciting. 3 sessions there, culminating in pole position for the number 1 Audi. But let's look back at the session, John. Still quite grey first thing in the morning as the drivers gathered their thoughts, thought their way out around the lap here at Zolder. 4 kilometres. There for the first time we're seeing the new livery on the number 1 Audi, and that has been delivering every time it's been out onto the circuit. And just a chance to see the flow of the Zolder circuit as we weave through the back section, out through the trees. And there were incidents. That was Christopher Mies getting it wrong at the chicane, and we think that was why the red flag was brought out. The session restarted very soon again, and we started to see the pace of the Bentleys, the pace and of course the rolling thunder, the noise they made. And Peter Cox coming on board this weekend. It wasn't a great welcome back because he got clouted by the one of the 2 BMWs there, and I don't know if it did any damage to the back of the car, but there certainly was a little bit of debris flowing. But one thing that was really flowing was out on the circuit with the 333 Ferrari. Very spectacular. Norbert Siegler really pushing it hard and to good effect. Now, over the curbs at the chicane, the big question at Zolder is how much curb do you use? And the ISR Audis used only a little bit, but Tom Dillman, he used the curbs, but that's because he had a full 4-wheel drift as he learnt his way in the big Bentley. Now, finding track space was also a matter of great importance, and Craig Dolby just got caught up in a run of cars there with the Lamborghini right ahead of him. Having dropped back would have been better for him. big moment for the very spectacular 55 McLaren at the chicane. Kevin Estre really pushing on. Much smoother runs seem to be coming the way of Norbert Siedler in the Ronaldo Racing Ferrari. No twitches there through turn one, hits the curb slightly on the inside, but the person making the biggest flow around the circuit was Laurent Vantour on home ground, lives overlooking the circuit. He knows where the curbs are. He hit a few of them, but it worked incredibly well because the end result was the fastest lap of all and pole position, much to the delight of Robin Friends.